Hello, dear listener, and welcome. As the day begins to softly fade, and the quiet stillness of night gently descends upon us, I invite you to drift with me into a realm of profound wonder. A realm that resides not in the distant stars, nor in the deepest oceans, but within the very fabric of your own being. Tonight, our gentle exploration will center around a concept that is at once intimately familiar and utterly mysterious: consciousness. Take a slow, deep breath, allowing your shoulders to relax, your muscles to soften. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. This sensation, this awareness of your own breath, your own body, is but one tiny facet of the vast, shimmering jewel we call consciousness. It is, quite simply, being aware. Aware of something deep within yourself, perhaps a quiet thought, a lingering feeling, a memory gently surfacing. Or, it is being conscious of the world around you, the comforting warmth of your blanket, the distant whisper of the wind, the soft glow of a night light. This profound capacity to be present, to experience, to know, is what we seek to gently unravel tonight. For millennia, this enigmatic phenomenon has captivated the most brilliant minds. Philosophers, with their boundless curiosity, have pondered its nature. Scientists, with their meticulous observations, have sought to locate its origins. Theologians, with their profound faith, have ascribed to it a divine spark. Yet, despite this extensive tapestry of thought, this rich history of explanation, analysis, and debate, a complete consensus remains elusive. There is no single, universally accepted understanding of what consciousness truly is. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of a vast, tranquil lake, its surface reflecting the endless sky. You can see the stars, the clouds, the distant trees, yet the depths of the lake remain hidden, mysterious. Consciousness is much like that lake. We experience its surface, our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, but its true nature, its hidden depths, continue to beckon us with unanswered questions. What exactly needs to be studied to truly understand it? Can it even be considered a concept that science, in its current form, is equipped to fully grasp? These are not questions with easy answers, and in their very ambiguity lies a beautiful, profound mystery. Sometimes, in our quest for understanding, we find that the term, consciousness, seems to blend seamlessly with the word mind. They are used interchangeably, as if they are one and the same. Yet, at other times, consciousness is seen as merely an aspect of the mind, a particular function or quality it possesses, rather than the entirety of the mind itself. This subtle distinction highlights the slippery nature of the concept, how it shifts and transforms even in our linguistic attempts to pin it down. In days gone by, the notion of consciousness held a more specific, perhaps even poetic, meaning. It was often synonymous with one's inner life. Think of a quiet, secluded garden within yourself, a sanctuary where private thoughts bloomed, where imagination took flight, where the subtle currents of volition, of choice and will, flowed freely. It was the world of introspection, the quiet act of looking within, to understand oneself. A deeply personal, almost sacred space. But as our understanding, or perhaps our attempts at understanding, have evolved, the scope of consciousness has broadened. Today, it often encompasses a far wider spectrum of experience. It includes any kind of cognition, any act of knowing or processing information. It embraces every experience we have, from the simplest sensation to the most complex emotional tapestry. Every feeling, every perception, every flicker of awareness now falls under its expansive umbrella. Consider the gentle rhythm of your breathing now. Are you aware of it? Yes. This is a form of awareness. But then, can you become aware that you are aware of your breathing? This subtle shift, this capacity for awareness of awareness, is another layer of consciousness, often termed metacognition, thinking about thinking, knowing about knowing. And then there is self-awareness, that profound understanding that you are a distinct individual, separate from the world around you, with your own unique thoughts and feelings. These intricate layers can feel as if they are continuously changing, a flowing river of experience, never quite the same from one moment to the next. Or, at other times, consciousness can feel like an unchanging presence, a still point amidst the flux, a constant observer. Even in the medical field, a practical definition of consciousness is essential. It helps us, for instance, to discern the profound state of coma from other altered states of awareness. While these medical definitions offer a vital framework for clinical purposes, they often touch only the surface of the philosophical and existential questions that continue to swirl around this concept. This remarkable, almost bewildering, range of research, notions, and speculations surrounding consciousness naturally sparks a gentle curiosity within us. It leads us to wonder softly whether we are even asking the right questions. Are we approaching this mystery from the most illuminating angle? The very act of asking these questions, in itself, is an act of consciousness, a beautiful paradox. Let's allow our thoughts to drift, like leaves upon a quiet stream, through some of the evocative descriptions and explanations that have been offered over time. Consciousness has been envisioned as an ordered distinction between self and environment, a clear boundary that allows us to perceive where we end and the world begins. Imagine the gentle sensation of your skin, defining your physical self, separating you from the air around you. This simple boundary is a fundamental aspect of how we experience reality. It can also be seen as something as fundamental as simple wakefulness. The state of being awake, of not being asleep, of having our senses engaged and our minds active. Yet, we know that wakefulness alone doesn't capture its full richness. Consciousness is also often described as one's sense of selfhood or soul, a profound, unique essence that can only be explored by looking within, by that quiet, inward gaze we spoke of earlier. This sense of an enduring self connects us to a long lineage of spiritual and philosophical traditions. Another beautiful metaphor, attributed to the renowned philosopher William James, speaks of consciousness as a stream of contents. Imagine a river, ever flowing, ever changing, carrying thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories, all in a continuous, seamless current. There are no abrupt breaks, only a gentle, perpetual motion. Each moment of awareness flows into the next, forming the tapestry of our lived experience. And then, in a more scientific vein, consciousness can be considered a mental state, a mental event, or a mental process of the brain. These descriptions attempt to root consciousness in the physical architecture of our being, suggesting it is an emergent property, a complex dance of neurons and synapses. While this offers a concrete framework for scientific inquiry, it still leaves many questions unanswered about how the physical stuff of the brain gives rise to the subjective, inner experience of being. Now, let's turn our attention to the very words we use to speak of this profound mystery. Our language, like an ancient river, carries echoes of the past, offering clues to how our understanding of consciousness has flowed and transformed over time. The words conscious and consciousness themselves are relatively young in the English language, tracing their origins back to the 17th century. The first recorded use of conscious, as a simple adjective, in a fascinatingly figurative way, was applied not to a person, but to inanimate objects. Imagine the poetic phrase, the conscious groves, penned in 1643. What could it mean for groves, for trees to be conscious? Perhaps it evoked a sense of ancient knowing, a silent, shared awareness embedded within nature itself. This early usage hints at a broader, more mystical understanding before it settled into its more human-centric meaning. The linguistic journey truly begins with the Latin root, conscious. This word is a beautiful compound, woven from con meaning together, and scio meaning to know. So, conscious literally meant knowing with, or having joined to a common knowledge with another. Picture two individuals sharing a secret, a quiet understanding known only to them. They are conscious of it, one to another. The esteemed philosopher Thomas Hobbes, in his monumental work Leviathan in 1651, articulated this shared knowledge beautifully. He wrote, "Where two, or more men, know of one and the same fact, they are said to be conscious of it one to another." Imagine the quiet intimacy of shared witness, the shared experience of a truth. This was the initial ground upon which our modern concept would eventually grow. But the Latin language offered an even more intriguing nuance, the phrase conscious sibi. This translates, quite literally, as knowing with oneself. Or, perhaps more evocatively, sharing knowledge with oneself about something. Pause for a moment and consider that. Sharing knowledge with oneself. This phrase carries the figurative sense of knowing that one knows. It's not just knowing a fact, but being aware of that very knowing, a self-reflexive understanding. This is something akin to our modern English word, conscious. Yet, when it was rendered into English, it often appeared as conscious to oneself, or conscious unto oneself. We find Archbishop Usher, for instance, writing in 1613 of being so conscious unto myself of my great weakness. Here, the awareness is entirely internal, a private recognition of one's own state. Then there is the Latin term conscientia. This word, too, carries the literal meaning of knowledge with. It first emerges in ancient Roman juridical texts, in the writings of figures like Cicero. In this context, conscientia held a distinct moral value. It referred to a kind of shared knowledge, specifically what a witness knew of someone else's deeds. Imagine the gravity of a witness's testimony, the knowledge they shared with the court about the actions of another, carrying with it implications of right and wrong, of justice and responsibility. The bridge from this juridical meaning to something more akin to our modern conscience, and then consciousness, is a fascinating philosophical journey. René Descartes, the great French philosopher of the 17th century, often considered the father of modern philosophy, wrote in Latin and is generally credited as one of the first to employ conscientia in a manner less like its traditional Roman meaning and more aligned with how modern English speakers might use conscience. However, Descartes himself never explicitly defined this evolving meaning. In his work, Search After Truth, published posthumously in Amsterdam in 1701, he added a revealing gloss to the word conscientia, vel interno testimonio. This phrase translates to conscience, or internal testimony. This suggests that for Descartes, conscientia might have meant the knowledge of the value of one's own thoughts. It implies an internal witness, a private assessment of one's inner world. It's a subtle but significant step towards the internalized, subjective understanding of consciousness we hold today. The scholar Timothy M. Harrison has illuminated how the poetry of John Milton, with its profound exploration of inner states and moral dilemmas, played a crucial role in this gentle, gradual shift during the 17th century from the concept of conscience to the more expansive idea of consciousness. The true origin of our modern concept of consciousness, the one that resonates most strongly with how we understand it today, is frequently attributed to the influential English philosopher John Locke. In his seminal work, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, published in 1690, Locke offered a concise yet profoundly impactful definition. He defined consciousness as the perception of what passes in a man's own mind. Take a moment to let that sink in. the perception of what passes in a man's own mind. This definition shifted the focus squarely onto the subjective, internal experience. It wasn't about shared knowledge or moral judgment, but about the immediate, personal awareness of one's own mental contents. Locke's essay became a cornerstone of 18th-century British philosophy, profoundly shaping how thinkers understood the mind and human experience. His definition of consciousness was so influential that it even found its way into Samuel Johnson's celebrated dictionary in 1755, solidifying its place in the linguistic and philosophical landscape of the time. Across the Channel, the French term conscience also evolved. In the 1753 volume of Diderot and D'Alembert's monumental encyclopédie, it was defined in a way that closely mirrored the English consciousness. It was described as the opinion or internal feeling that we ourselves have from what we do. Again, we see the emphasis on an internal, subjective awareness, a private sense of one's own actions and their impact. As we gently transition, let's consider the ongoing challenge, the inherent problem of definition, that continues to shroud consciousness in a veil of mystery. Even as we trace its linguistic lineage and philosophical development, scholars remain divided on fundamental questions. For instance, did the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, with his comprehensive system of thought, possess a concept that we would recognize as consciousness? He did not employ any single word or terminology that is clearly analogous to the phenomenon or concept that John Locke later so elegantly defined. Victor Caston, a contemporary scholar, suggests that Aristotle did indeed have a concept, but one that was perhaps more closely aligned with what we understand as perception. This highlights the very real difficulty in projecting modern concepts onto ancient texts, and how deeply our understanding is tied to the specific language and intellectual frameworks of our time. Modern dictionary definitions, which we often take for granted, are themselves the culmination of centuries of evolving thought and usage. They reflect a wide array of meanings, many of which seem related, yet also contain subtle differences that have, over time, become points of considerable controversy. Consider, for example, the nuanced distinction between inward awareness and the perception of the physical world. When you are lost in a daydream, recalling a cherished memory, you are engaged in inward awareness. Your focus is internal, on the landscape of your mind. But when you feel the gentle pressure of your head on the pillow, or hear the quiet ticking of a clock, you are engaged in the perception of the physical world around you. Both are aspects of consciousness, yet they feel distinct. How do these two forms of awareness interrelate? Are they fundamentally different processes, or merely different orientations of the same underlying capacity? Then there is the profound distinction between conscious and unconscious. Much of our mental activity, as we now understand, occurs beneath the surface of our awareness. Thoughts, feelings, impulses, and memories constantly swirl in the vast ocean of the unconscious, profoundly influencing our conscious experience without our explicit knowledge. How do these two realms interact? What is the boundary between them, if a boundary even exists? And what does it mean for consciousness if so much of our mental life operates beyond its direct grasp? And finally, there is the enduring philosophical debate surrounding the notion of a mental entity or mental activity that is not physical. This is the very heart of the mind-body problem, one of the most persistent and perplexing questions in philosophy. Is consciousness a purely physical phenomenon, an emergent property of the brain, much like wetness is an emergent property of water? Or is there something fundamentally non-physical about our subjective experience, our sense of I, our inner world of qualia, the redness of red, the taste of chocolate? These are not trivial distinctions. They lie at the very core of how we understand ourselves, our place in the universe, and the ultimate nature of reality itself. The common usage definitions found in comprehensive dictionaries, like Webster's Third New International Dictionary from 1966, attempt to capture this complex tapestry. They often begin with phrases such as awareness or perception of an inward psychological or spiritual fact, intuitively perceived knowledge of some. The definition, though incomplete in our provided text, clearly points towards that internal, often intuitive, understanding of our inner states. It speaks to a direct knowing, a feeling of certainty about one's own experience, even if that experience defies easy articulation or external verification. This journey through the definitions, the etymology, and the ongoing debates surrounding consciousness reveals not a simple answer, but a rich, multifaceted mystery. It shows us that consciousness is not a static concept, but a dynamic, evolving understanding shaped by language, philosophy, science, and our deepest human intuitions. It is a concept that challenges us to look within, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the vast, uncharted territories of the mind. As you lie here, perhaps drifting closer to the gentle embrace of sleep, consider your own consciousness. It is the vessel through which you experience this very moment, this voice, this quiet exploration. It is the awareness that allows you to feel the comfort of your bed, to hear the soft sounds around you, and to process these words. It is the capacity that allows you to remember moments from your day, or to anticipate the peaceful rest of the night. Consciousness is your unique window onto the universe, the private theater of your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. It is the silent observer and the active participant in your life. And in its very mystery, there is a profound beauty, a sense of wonder that invites us to simply be present, to simply be aware. Allow your mind to gently release any lingering thoughts or worries. Let them drift away, like clouds on a summer sky. Focus instead on the simple fact of your being, your awareness. Feel the quiet hum of your own existence. This capacity for internal experience, for external perception, for self-knowledge, this is consciousness. As you sink deeper into relaxation, know that this profound and complex topic continues to inspire awe and inquiry. And in that inquiry, in that gentle wonder, lies a path to deeper understanding, not just of consciousness itself, but of what it means to be human. May your journey into sleep be peaceful, restorative, and filled with the quiet, comforting awareness of your own wonderful being. Good night, dear listener. Rest well.